everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm going to show you how to make a really simple dice rolling app. It's going to have all the dice you need for Dungeons & Dragons, so a D4, a D6, a D8, a D10, and you're going to be able to hit the buttons to roll the dice or pick a random number from the dice. This is the first video I'm making, and it's going to be just like you see here, just really simple, showing the different images. But I'll do some other videos coming up to add more features to it, like sound and animation. So thanks a lot for watching. Alright, we will start with a single view app. Call it DiceRoller Tutorial. You want the language to be Swift. User interface storyboard. We are going to start by going into our main.storyboard and setting up what our screen is going to look like. Start with a button. And an image view. I'm going to adjust the font on the button. I'm going to adjust the background on the button, so I have the button highlighted. I'm going to go down to background under the tab that looks like a shield. I kind of like that color. I'm going to adjust the text color. And I kind of like how that button looks, so I'll keep that. Let me see the size of it. 67 by 72. I kind of want it to be equal, so maybe I'll go 80 by 80 and just make it a square. So once I get the button looking the way I want to, I'm going to copy it and I'm going to paste it. So let's see, we need a D4, we need a D6, D8, D10, D12, and D20. So we're going to end up with 6 buttons. Maybe I'll do 2 rows of 3. I don't think I'm going to put constraints on them right now. I think when I'm finishing up this app, I might put them in stack views and constrain them. But right now, I'll just be moving them around. So I get D4, D8, D10. D12. Oh, I forgot my D6 and my D20. I don't like how the 3 digits look, so I think I'm gonna adjust the font size on here. Too small. I'm gonna try this. And let me see if I can adjust the size. Alright, I kind of like how that looks. So the button's going to be 80 by 80, and the font size is going to be 35 medium. So let me go around and change these. And I'm going to make sure they're all 80 by 80. Alright, they're all 80 by 80 and 35 font. So I'm going to move them around a little bit. Guess you could go D4, D6, D8, D10, D12, D20. So these buttons will just roll the different dice that I want, and the dice will appear in the image view. Alright, so I guess the next step is to connect everything, so I'm going to open up an editor window, so with this button right here, and I want my view controller on this side and my storyboard over here. So I'm going to put my outlets up top here. I'm going to hold down Control. I'm going to click on the image view, and I'm going to drag it to where I want to connect it, right under the outlets. I'm connecting my image view. I'm going to call it Dice Image and connect that. Next, I'm going to connect my buttons. I think I'm going to close this for now. So I'm going to connect my buttons down here. These will be my actions. I'm holding down Control, click, and drag to connect the buttons. Awesome, I have all my buttons connected. I'm just going to put a little space in between the curly brackets. Just makes it a little bit easier for me. Next up, I'm going to import my assets. So down below in the description of this video, there'll be a link to a folder with all the images. So I'm going to drop those images here into my app icon set. Right, so I have my Xcode project open. I have my X assets folder open, and I have all my dice images. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Shift so I can highlight all of these dice images at once. And I'm just, oops, let me try that again, all the way at the bottom. I'm going to drag these into my assets. .x assets folder, so I'll have a reference for each image. There's going to be a D4 sided dice, a D6 sided dice, D8, D10, D12, D20, everything you need to play Dungeons and Dragons. And then I'm going to go into my viewcontroller.swift file. I'm going to mark another spot for variables and constants. Putting in these comments just makes navigating my app a little bit easier. Inside of variables and constants, I'm going to create a constant for each of the dice images. I've named my dice. Let me go into X assets really quickly. I named my dice D4-1 would be a D4 dice with 1 showing. D4-2 would be a D4 dice with 2 showing on it. And that's how I named it. D10-1 would be a D10 dice with 1 showing on it. D10-2 would be a D10 dice with 2 showing on it. So that's just how I chose to name it. You might name it something else, something easier for you. I found this was easy for myself. And so I'm creating a constant, let D41 equal a UI image named D41. So I'm assigning all of the images that I added to be a constant. So I have to do that with my D4 dice. I have to do that with my D6 dice. I have to do that with my D8 dice, my D10 dice, my D12 dice, and finally my D20 dice. So that I have a reference for each of those images that I have put in. I found the easiest way to do this was to write one line, then copy and paste it. So I wrote let D21 equal UI image named quotation marks D21, and then I copied that, pasted it 20 times, and I changed the number of the dice for each one. After that, we are going to create variables for the array. So I have a D4 array. It's going to be an array of UI images, and I'm going to have a D6 array. It's going to be an array of UI images. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these constants that I've created inside of the array, but for now I just need to create the arrays. So yeah, once you've created all those references and you've created all those arrays, we'll move on to the next step. I'm going to mark another spot. It's going to be for functions. And the first function I am going to create is going to be called create arrays. So inside of create arrays, I am going to say the name of the arrays I created, D4. Is going to be equal to square brackets, and then I'm going to call those references that I created. So for D4, I have D41, D42, D43, and D44, the different sides of the dice. And that is going to be my array for my D4 array. I'm going to do the same thing for D6, D8, D10, D12, and finally D20. So I'm going to have an array for each of the dice. Once I created that function, create arrays, I need to call that function inside of viewDidLoad. So I'm going inside of viewDidLoad, and I'm just going to call that function called create arrays. And this is going to make an array for all my dice images. Okay, inside of my D4 button, I'm going to say let random int. It's going to be equal to a random int from 0 and then less than 4. So it could be a random number 0, 1, 2, or 3. And the reason why I'm using those numbers is because inside of my D4 array, the index number, when you create an array, each of these items, D41, D42, D43, and D44, will all have index numbers. The first index number will be 0, the second one will be 1, the third one will be 2, and the fourth one will be 3. The reason why it does that is just it always starts on 0. So that is why I'm choosing a random int 0, 2, 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the dice image.image is going to be equal to the D4 array index number, random number. So whatever random number I've selected, it will choose that as the index number. So it will pick a random one out of these 4, and it will assign that to the dice image when the button is pressed. And I'll do the same thing for the D6 button, the D8 button, So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy and I'm going to paste this in here. I'm going to do, instead of less than 4, I'm going to do less than 6. Instead of the D4 array, I'm going to do the D6 array. And that should be all I need to change for each one of these. All right, when I'm all done with that, I am going to run it to test it. I'm missing a letter here, D8 array. Once I've finished all of that, I'm going to run it to test it, make sure everything's working. I like to test it early and often just so I can catch any bugs that might be happening. All right. Seems to be working for picking a random image from the different dice. This one looks a little bit blurry. Yeah, but they look okay. All right, so this is a very simple dice rolling app. I am going to create another video that teaches you how to add sound and maybe animation to watch the dice roll. So keep your eyes out for that. Thanks a lot for watching, and I hope you found this video useful.